Mike Williams' disappearance on Lake Seminole left the nation in shock and bewilderment. The mysterious circumstances surrounding his disappearance had remained unsolved for years, leaving no clues or leads as to what had happened. With no leads or clues, the case seemed destined to remain unsolved indefinitely. However, the truth was finally revealed in a shocking turn of events, leaving everyone in disbelief. Mike Williams was a man who was full of life and destined for great things. Born Jerry Michael Williams, but known as Michael or Mike, he grew up north of Tallahassee, Florida. His parents sacrificed a great deal to ensure that he and his brother had the opportunity to attend North Florida Christian High School, an elite private school. While in high school, Mike flourished. He was actively involved in the student council and played football. During this time, Mike developed a deep passion for duck hunting. Through this interest, he met his lifelong best friend, Brian Winchester. Another person who entered Mike's life in high school was Denise Morell. Denise would tell people she knew she wanted to marry him from the moment they met. Their relationship blossomed, and they became inseparable. After graduating high school, Mike continued his education at Florida State University, where he majored in political science and urban planning. Despite his academic pursuits, Mike always made time for Denise. Their love for each other only grew stronger with each passing day. Mike embarked on a successful professional journey. An appraisal group hired him as a property appraiser. The company's owners praised Mike for his hard work and dedication, stating he was the hardest working man they had ever met. On December 17, 1994, Mike married his high school sweetheart Denise Morell in a beautiful wedding ceremony. 4 years later, Mike and Denise welcomed their daughter into the world. Mike was an incredibly devoted father obsessed with his baby girl. As the years passed, Mike began looking forward to the future. He told his mother and brother that he and Denise wanted to expand their family. Mike and Denise had big plans to vacation in Hawaii, travel to Jamaica for work, and build a strong foundation for their growing family. But on December 16, 2000, everything changed. Mike went duck hunting on Lake Seminole and never returned home. On December 16, 2000, 31-year-old Mike Williams left his home around 3 a.m. to embark on a routine duck hunting expedition. Lake Seminole, located in northwest Tallahassee, Florida, is a vast reservoir formed by the Apalachicola River. The reservoir serves as a popular spot for hunters. Mike's wife Denise anxiously awaited his return, as the couple planned to celebrate their anniversary in Apalachicola that night. When Mike still hadn't returned by noon that day, Denise reached out to their friends and family members to see if they had any information regarding his whereabouts. One of Mike's closest friends, Brian Winchester, along with Brian's father, decided to visit the area where Mike was known to go duck hunting. Together they located Mike's Ford Bronco near a remote boat launch on Lake Seminole, but there was no sign of Mike. Alarmed by the lack of any clues or signs, Mike's loved ones contacted the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the WFC. WFC officers sprang into action, deploying a helicopter to circle the 30,000-acre lake in search of Mike or his boat. Unfortunately, there was no sign of him anywhere. As time passed, speculation grew among Mike's loved ones. They wondered if he had somehow fallen out of his boat, if it had hit one of the tree stumps in the lake and trapped him beneath the vegetation in the water. This scenario seemed plausible, as the water in Lake Seminole is shallow and dotted with numerous tree stumps, making it a potential hazard for boaters. One day after Mike's disappearance, on December 17th, his best friend Brian made a shocking discovery. Brian stumbled upon Mike's boat, located not far from the landing where Mike's car was parked. Inside the boat was Mike's shotgun for hunting, still in the case, his decoys, and life jackets. This discovery raised even more questions about Mike's disappearance. The officers examining the scene noted that Mike had not even started hunting ducks before he vanished. The mysterious disappearance of Mike Williams on Lake Seminole left the community of Tallahassee shocked and worried. Denise, Mike's wife, struggled to cope with the emotional toll of his disappearance. She was consumed by grief and often dissolved into tears when friends came to visit. With each passing day, the hope for Mike's safe return grew dimmer. The holidays approached, and on Christmas Eve, Mike's mother paid a visit to the lake. A flicker of hope ignited as she stood at the boat launch where Brian had found Mike's car. She felt Mike was not lost in the lake, but perhaps still alive. However, FWC officers remained steadfast in their belief that Mike had drowned. They explained that his body would eventually surface, yet it never appeared. 10 days into the search for Mike Williams, a camo-patterned hunting cap was found floating in Lake Seminole. The hat, identified as belonging to Mike, was a significant clue in the case. Mike's best friend Brian verified that the hat was indeed his, and provided corroborating evidence in the form of a picture showing Mike wearing the hat. This revelation intensified the belief that Mike was in the lake. However, the discovery of a hunting cap floating in the water brought another disturbing element to the investigation. Despite its beauty, Lake Seminole was teeming with hundreds of alligators. This newfound knowledge raised the question of whether a gator might have pulled Mike into the water and concealed his body beneath a log. While this theory was intriguing, not everyone subscribed to it. Mike's mother, for example, expressed her skepticism. She deeply feared alligators, having witnessed her son's passion for duck hunting. However, Mike had always assured her that he only hunted during cold weather when the alligators were dormant. Despite her apprehension, Mike's mother clung to the belief that her son was still alive. She believed he would have managed to escape if he had encountered an alligator. Her unwavering faith provided her with strength and hope. The ongoing search for Mike continued, with investigators and loved ones hoping for some sign of his whereabouts. As the investigation continued, one question remained in everyone's mind. What happened to Mike Williams? As the months passed, the search gradually subsided. But in June 2001, an angler stumbled upon a pair of waders floating in the lake. This discovery rekindled interest in the investigation and prompted a renewed search for Mike. Divers were called to investigate and search the bottom of the lake. They eventually recovered a lightweight hunting coat and a flashlight, items that belonged to Mike. However, something peculiar about these discoveries was that the wader, jacket, and flashlights showed no signs of having been in the water for an extended period. Additionally, no DNA was recovered from any of the three items, indicating that Mike might not have been wearing them at the time of his disappearance. Despite the lack of evidence, a judge in Tallahassee ruled that Mike was indeed deceased and signed a death certificate listing the cause of death as drowning. Mike's mother, who was left devastated by the loss of her son, had numerous questions regarding her son's belongings that were found in the lake. She felt that someone may have planted these belongings in order to lead them away from the truth about what happened to Mike. However, with Mike declared deceased, the court allowed his wife, Denise, to move forward with claims on Mike's life insurance policies. As a result, Denise received a hefty payout of over $1 million. While everyone else seemed to accept the narrative that Mike had drowned in the lake, his mother refused to believe that this was the case. She was determined to find answers and uncover the truth regarding her son's disappearance. Mike's mother took proactive measures in her search, including posting missing persons flyers of Mike all over Tallahassee, paying for billboards to advertise his disappearance, and carrying around a picket sign with the message, "My son is missing, please help me find him." Despite her efforts, Mike's mother encountered resistance from various authorities. She wrote letters to local and state officials, but they claimed that alligators had devoured Mike's body after he drowned. However, Mike's mother remained steadfast in her belief that there was more to Mike's disappearance than met the eye. Finally, in February 2004, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, opened a case file on Mike's disappearance and assigned a team of detectives to investigate the case. The detectives began by revisiting the initial search efforts and conducting interviews with everyone involved in the initial search. During the investigation, one significant discovery made by the FDLE detectives was the existence of multiple life insurance policies on Mike's life. His best friend and insurance agent, Brian Winchester, drafted one of these policies only weeks before Mike went missing. Furthermore, the detectives noticed that Mike's best friend Brian married Mike's wife, Denise, in September 2004. This development added another layer of suspicion to the case. Many people found this occurrence odd, and rumors began to surface that Denise and Brian could have been involved in Mike's disappearance. Although the detectives were suspicious of Denise and Brian, they were unable to find sufficient evidence to bring charges against them. Despite the lack of viable leads generated by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, his mother remained steadfast in her advocacy for her son. Her tireless efforts ultimately led to the popular true crime television series Disappeared, dedicating a segment to Mike's case in late 2011. Starting in 2012, Mike's mother began writing one letter a day to then Governor of Florida Rick Scott. pleading with him to have an agency other than the FDLE investigate Mike's disappearance or appoint a special prosecutor. A special prosecutor is an individual or entity appointed to investigate and prosecute a specific case or cases, usually when a conflict of interest arises within the regular prosecutor's office. Mike's mother later detailed her concerns regarding the FDLE's handling of the case and highlighted the need for fresh eyes to uncover the truth. Despite sending nearly 200 letters, Mike's mother never received a response from the governor's office. She later discovered that all the letters she had sent had been forwarded to the FDLE headquarters, where they remained unopened. This discovery enraged Mike's mother, as she felt that no one was taking her concerns seriously or showing any interest in finding her son. In 2011, another lead emerged in the search for Mike Williams. A self-proclaimed psychic and certified forensic psychological profiler reviewed the case and identified a potential location of Mike's body. She gave investigators the coordinates of another boat launch in Wakulla County. Cadaver dogs sniffed the area, but no evidence was found. Despite the lack of evidence, the psychic believed they were moving in the right direction. According to state officials in 2011, the psychic did not find any additional evidence that warranted a further investigation. However, in 2012, Mike's widow, Denise, separated from her then-husband Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester. As Denise and Brian's marriage crumbled, a long-held secret unraveled, shedding light on what happened to Mike on Lake Seminole nearly a decade earlier. Denise filed for divorce from Brian in 2015. The divorce proceedings were difficult, with Denise and Brian expressing frustration and disappointment. However, it was Brian's addiction to sex that ultimately led to the dissolution of their marriage. She said she could no longer tolerate the constant infidelity and sought a divorce to put an end to the turmoil. In August 2016, a full year after filing for divorce, Brian took matters into his own hands. Denise was unaware that Brian had followed her as she drove to work at Florida State University. While on the phone with her sister, Denise caught sight of Brian climbing over the back seat of her car. Panic ensued as she realized she was being kidnapped. Without hesitation, Brian took Denise's phone and ordered her to drive. Denise initially hesitated, not wanting to comply with his demands. However, when Brian brandished a firearm, she quickly realized that she had little option but to drive. Denise complied with the instructions, hoping that the situation would resolve itself. According to Denise, Brian justified his actions by stating he had no choice. He explained that she had ignored his calls and text messages, forcing him to resort to drastic measures. As they continued their journey, Brian directed Denise to drive somewhere else. However, instead of following his usual demands, Denise decided to take matters into her own hands. She pulled into a pharmacy parking lot, knowing it was safe and public. Inside the parking lot, Denise and Brian engaged in a tense conversation. Brian expressed his hopelessness and despair, stating he had nothing to live for if he divorced. He assured Denise that he didn't want to hurt her in any way. Denise listened carefully to Brian's words, trying to console him and understand his state of mind. She assured him that she cared about him and wanted to help him in any way she could. As the conversation continued and Brian calmed down, Denise agreed to drive to where he had left his truck at a nearby park. Upon leaving Denise's car, Brian took a tan sheet, a plastic covering, a spray bleach bottle, and various tools from Denise's vehicle. Despite Brian's claim that he did not intend to harm Denise, Denise felt that he had a different plan in mind for her. Although Denise promised Brian she would not go to the police as soon as he was no longer in her sight, she immediately drove to the sheriff's department. Brian was subsequently arrested and charged with kidnapping, armed burglary, and domestic assault. Denise requested a protective order informing the court that she had feared for her life and her daughters. As a result, Brian was ordered to be held without bond. On December 19, 2017, Brian was sentenced to 20 years in prison and 15 years of probation. Mike Williams' disappearance was a topic that was not addressed during the Brian Winchester hearing in 2017. However, behind the scenes, there were numerous wheels turning as Brian Winchester had made a deal with the detectives 2 months earlier. He agreed to provide information regarding what happened to Mike Williams on December 2000 on Lake Seminole in exchange for immunity from prosecution on charges related to Mike's disappearance. In a recorded interview, Brian told the detectives that he had started an extramarital affair with Denise on October 13, 1997, behind both his and his wife's back. According to Brian, Denise made their intentions clear from the beginning, stating that she would never divorce Mike. The detectives learned that maintaining appearance was of utmost importance for Denise, and a divorce would be a significant blemish on her stellar reputation. However, even though Denise wanted to be with Brian, she refused to leave her marriage with Mike legally. As a result, Brian stated that Denise began discussing the idea of killing Mike and making it appear as an accident. This plan would allow her to continue her relationship with Brian while maintaining her public image. Denise wanted Mike out of the picture and wanted to remove Brian's wife. However, Brian denied having any intention of killing his first wife, the mother of his children. Instead, he filed for divorce. Initially, Brian and Denise concocted a plan to have Mike killed at his office and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. However, they later settled on the idea of arranging a hunting accident. On the day Mike went missing, Brian lured Mike to Lake Seminole. Once they were out on the boat, Brian encouraged Mike to put on his waders. According to Brian, what happened next was a panicked situation. As Mike struggled in the water, attempting to pull himself up onto a tree stump, Brian said he and Mike were in a frenzy. Mike desperately clung to the tree stump, fighting for his life. In a moment of desperation, Brian took Mike's shotgun and shot Mike in the face. Because Brian killed Mike by a gunshot, not drowning, as Brian had planned to kill him, there was no way for Brian to pass Mike's death off as an accident. Brian dragged Mike's body back into the boat. He then loaded Mike's body into his truck and drove to a remote location near a rural lake in Leon County and buried him there. Brian claimed that they had slowed down their affair to avoid raising suspicion. He explained that the reason for his recent imprisonment on kidnapping charges was that he was fearful of Denise disclosing the truth regarding Mike's disappearance after the divorce. Crime scene investigators went out to the spot where Brian indicated he buried Mike's body and found human remains that they matched to Mike Williams. With the help of forensic evidence, investigators were able to confirm that the remains belonged to Mike Williams. This breakthrough in the case provided the family with some closure, as they now knew that Mike was no longer missing, but he had been tragically killed. When Mike's mother found out the truth about what happened to her son, she was stunned to learn that his wife and best friend had had him killed. On May 8, 2018, Denise was arrested while leaving her work after the discovery of Mike's body. She was subsequently charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Denise pleaded not guilty to the charges. Her trial began on December 10, 2018, and the star witness testifying against her was her ex-husband, Brian Winchester. During Brian's testimony, he spoke in detail about an incident that occurred at the lake where Mike was clinging onto a stump before he was shot and killed. This revelation came as a shock to Mike's mother, who had never heard those details before. It was especially difficult for her to know that her son was in the middle of a freezing lake, screaming for help, and that she couldn't have been there to help him. This information was something she struggled to live with. Denise's trial lasted for 4 days, and the jury deliberated for 8 hours before finding Denise guilty of all charges. The judge sentenced Denise to life in prison after being convicted of committing murder. 5 months after her conviction, Denise's assets from Mike's estate were awarded to her and Mike's daughter. To escape prosecution on 3 counts of insurance fraud, Denise agreed to sign them over to her daughter. However, as part of the deal, Mike and Denise's daughter had to agree not to use any of the money on Denise's legal fees. If her daughter failed to comply with this condition, she would have to repay the state $150,000. In January 2020, Denise appealed for her conviction and sentence. Her attorney argued that the Florida First District Court of Appeal should overturn the conviction because there was insufficient evidence to prove her involvement in the murder of her first husband. Several months later, in November, the court overturned Denise's conviction for murder, but the conspiracy to commit murder charge remained. Denise remains in prison at the Florida Women's Reception Center, while Brian Winchester is serving his kidnapping sentence at the Wakulla Correctional Institution. Since Mike Williams was murdered in 2000, his mother has not had any contact with her granddaughter. However, Denise has made her intentions clear to Mike's mother. She has told her that if she tried to reopen a criminal investigation into Mike's disappearance, she would never see her granddaughter again. In an episode of Cold Case Files in 2023, Mike's mother expressed her desire to see her granddaughter. and tell her how amazing her son was and how much he loved her. However, according to sources, the two are still estranged. The reasons behind this estrangement remain unclear, but it is unfortunate that they have been unable to reconcile. The disappearance of Mike Williams on Lake Seminole was a tragic story of love and betrayal, but also a testament to the unwavering faith of his mother. Despite years of searching and countless setbacks, she never gave up hope that her son was still alive. Her determination and steadfast faith serve as a powerful reminder of the enduring bond between a mother and her child. Mike's case remains a chilling reminder of the dangers of love gone wrong, and the lengths a mother will go to keep the hope of finding her child alive.